All right, hope you guys all enjoyed that. I love listening and watching Brian. And we're going to go ahead while everybody's still eating. I know that we got a few more people that got to get up there and get some food. We got about 105, 106 people here tonight. So absolutely fantastic. Way to show up. For those of you that this is your first time here, can I see you raise your hand? Wonderful. Let's give them a round of applause. Woo! Good job. Thanks for coming, and I want to just share briefly a little bit more about what Elevate and Inspire is and who we are. I know that you're on... Oh, all right, nice. Good save. That's all right. As I was feeling super patriotic right there. So I want to share a little bit more about what the group is about. And I know a lot of you are on the Facebook page and you follow. We're getting more and more engagement on that page, which is fantastic. What we're really trying to do here is create courage. And that's what, on the back of the shirt here, the hashtag Free the Smiles and hashtag CBC stands for. What does CBC stand for? Yeah, awesome. Courage breeds courage. So the whole idea behind that is for all of us to continue to have courage in our walks, in outside, at our work, at our home, and to really try to breed more courage in other people. And we started off with freeing the smiles so that we can remove the masks, so that really to be fighting for our freedom and protecting our freedom there and having the freedom of choice. But it goes a lot further than that, as most of us in here know. So what we wanted to do, we've been talking about it a lot, of getting together and having boots on the ground for when we need that. And so that's what this group is about other freedom fighting, country loving, Rockford loving. We just want to do something that we can to make a difference and make a change here in the community that we work, play, and live in. So that's really a lot of what this is about, and it's really taking a common sense approach where we want to just fight for freedoms for ourselves, but mainly for our children and our grandchildren. And if we don't do that, I think it's really, really imperative that we remember this all the time, that for the 16, 17 months that we've been just going along to get along as a society, the message has been passed from the top down. And we, unfortunately, the people, when we look at that, are that bottom of the down when we think about the top down. So we just follow. So if the Biden administration says you wear your masks until you get vaccinated, then some governors also instill that and pass that down, and some mayors take that and pass that down. Some county health officials take that and pass that down, and local school boards take that and pass that down. And we, the people, I really believe this wholeheartedly, that it's only going to change when we, the people, start changing the momentum of that. And we have to be the ones that make the decision that, no, that does not make sense, and we are going to do things differently. And we have to figure out how we together can use the power of our numbers and our passion to have a voice that is heard. And we've got to do that in a positive way. One of the things... on the back, the Elevate and Inspire, one of the things that we want to make sure of with this group, it's a volatile atmosphere out there on social media and in the real world of different people with different thoughts, different beliefs, and so it's very challenging sometimes when we feel strongly about something, and then there's somebody else that feels strongly about something, and there's the cancel culture, and there's the, that type of thing. We want to stand strong in what our beliefs are. And Elevate and Inspire is about elevating businesses that protect our freedoms, that allow us to do business with them, whether we wear a mask or whether we don't, whether we get a vaccine or whether we don't, and allows that freedom of choice. And so we want to elevate those businesses. That's why every restaurant that we've gone to respects that, okay? And they allow us that freedom of choice. That's why we choose them. That's why we want to support them. And that's why we encourage everybody to go back and frequent those businesses. We want to elevate them by doing business with them and by sharing. And then we also want to inspire other people to do the same thing. So we can take and transfer our dollars to businesses that protect our freedom, okay? So instead of the instead of the cancel culture mob mentality, we don't want to spend too much time stinking thinking or being negative about businesses that don't protect our freedom. I know that there's a lot of times where we do discuss that because naturally we want to talk about that and identify businesses. And I've said before a couple of them that I personally will never shop at again, even after what happened in the last year and a half, because if they were willing to enforce mask mandate in order to come in and do commerce with a mask, they're going to do that when it comes to a vaccine. Okay, so I already have made the decision that that is a company that does not align with my beliefs, and so therefore I'm not going to go outside and pick at them and try to get them to change their mind. Their mind has already been made up. I'm just going to transfer my dollars and go somewhere else. Okay, and I hope and encourage that that's what we do. But yes, of course, we are going to talk about some of those businesses. I just don't want to spend too much time drilling those businesses from a negative standpoint. I just want to identify and say, hey, this business, it won't let you come in without a mask. And, I went there and I experienced it. So I have chosen to do business with this company, and they welcomed me with open arms, with my smile. And now I'm going to start doing business there. Okay. Does that make sense? So I don't want to spend too much time doing the stinking thinking and dogging somebody. There are people that still have to make a living, and if we go to businesses that make a living by protecting freedom and other people go to businesses that make a living on not protecting freedom, they can do that and we can do this. Okay, so that's kind of how I feel about that. So tonight we have a special guest I'm really excited about, and some of you have heard him a little bit before. Saturday night, March 29th, I think was, May 29th is when we had Jeremy out there to speak for a few minutes. He's a local constitutional attorney. So a lot of us really want to understand more of what our rights are. It's good for us to know where we stand and what we're passionate about and what we believe, but it's also helpful for us to know and to have an idea on what some real laws are and what the Constitution is about, what the First Amendment rights are that we have. We see all this stuff on social media about our First Amendment rights being, taken away. And then people are like, well, they're a business. They can say whatever they want to say, and they can do whatever they want to do. And, and then there's other people that say, no, they can't. And they're being sued by some states for infringing on people's, First Amendment rights. So there's a lot going on there. And so Jeremy is going to be able to help walk us through some of that. And we'll have a little bit of time. So today he's got a lot of material that he's going to share with us, okay? And then I don't think we're going to have a ton of time for questions today because I want to give him as much time as possible to share what he's got. And then we can have afterwards where we can retrieve questions. And then with Jeremy's permission, we'll take those questions and we'll do like a video interview and we'll put it on the page that will be a lot of those questions that come in. Because probably a lot of us have a lot of the same questions, and then we'll get those all answered, and we'll try to do that in the next week or two, and let that be kind of like a Q&A follow-up. It's really hard for Jeremy as an attorney. I find this difficult for me trying to run my business and jump into something like this that I'm really passionate about. There's that balance for all of us. There's a lot of people in here that are volunteering and helping out, and I appreciate it greatly. And for what we're doing is taking our time away from maybe our business and our family to put into this. So for Jeremy, I want to protect his time. And the reason why I say that, he loves to share. He loves to help people understand more. It's part of his passion. But to get a whole bunch of one phone call about, hey, what's my mask laws? And to get, one phone call about, what can I do at my school? It's really hard. So that's why I want to kind of protect that. And so that we can all utilize his expertise and I can collectively get the questions and then we can ask him and then we can all learn that. Does that make sense? Okay. So I'd like to do that. And then at the end of the night, when Jeremy's done, I'm going to have Jenny share. Jenny's up front. I'm going to have her share a little bit. There's been an awful lot of talk about stuff that's going, like what can we do with school boards? How can we communicate with the Winnebago County Health Department or Boone County Health Department? What's going on with critical race theory? Is there anything that we can do about that? So she's got just a few minutes that she wants to share that she's been investigating and learning about that. And there was something else. There's one other thing.
Let Jeremy get up there.
All right. Let me go ahead and pray real quick. And I know I should have done that before we started eating food. I apologize. And again, it doesn't matter. We don't know where everybody's at in their faith, or if they're Christian or Catholic or whatever. We don't care, and I hope that you don't care. This is another one of those freedom type things. We want to love everybody where they're at, even the people that are on the outside of the room, even the people that are in a place of high concern and fear and wearing masks and stuff like that. We want to love them where they're at, and we just want this group to be a group that is willing to, again, accept everybody where they're at, but really be fighting and protecting freedom. I would like to go ahead and say a quick prayer to kind of bless this meeting as we go and as we bring Jeremy up to speak, okay? Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for this time. Once again, this is like the 6th time of a group of us getting together. And thank you for putting this fire in us to stand in the gap and to try to really make a difference here. And we think about everything that we're doing, and we think about our kids, and we think about our grandkids. We think about the future. And if it was not for the hope and the faith that we have in you and that you instill in us and in our hearts, this would be really, really tough to deal with in this world today. And so we thank you for that. And we pray that you continue to plant that seed inside of us of faith and hope and encouragement and acceptance and love. And as we continue to move forward in this crazy world, we pray that we just become more and more close and connected to each other and to you, so that when there comes a time to really stand in the gap, that we're ready to lock arms and do that and to honor you in all that we do. In your name we pray and we thank you. And at this moment, Jeremy, why don't you come on up, buddy? Amen. All right, buddy. Let's go. Thank you.
Does anybody have dibs on these cups of water? No? Okay, I might need to grab one during the time. Okay, so thank you for having me. I'm Attorney Jeremy Ramsey. My office is here in Loves Park. I'm going to talk tonight about, now here's a heroic effort you need to know, okay? I'm going to talk about the Declaration, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights in about an hour and 15 minutes. Oh gosh. I think I remember in law school taking an entire year on those courses. So we're going to get really deep, right? I'm going to do my best. I am an allied attorney with the Alliance Defending Freedom. So if you don't know about the Alliance Defending Freedom, you should. There are several really great organizations out there. I'm going to have a list of a lot of them later on that you should be aware of. There's a lot of places out there. They're really good organizations. They're supporting our rights. Back in 2007, I had just gotten out of the Army. I was a former Judge Advocate General with the United States Army. I knew that I wanted to do something to defend constitutional rights. So what the ADF does, it is a worldwide legal organization ministry where they have full-time attorneys based out of Arizona, but they also have allied attorneys. I'm an allied attorney, so there are about 2,000 of us around the world. What happens is, if someone in the Rockford area, and it has happened many times, someone in the Rockford area says, hey, my religious freedom rights, my First Amendment rights are being denied, what do I do about this? They contact the ADF. The ADF puts them in contact with me, and then I help them. Thankfully, the ADF is filled with full-time attorneys who know way more about constitutional law than I do, so they can prepare briefs and arguments. And I just get to be the handsome, smiling face that steps up for school board meetings and things like that. So I committed to them. They put me through a week-long training, and I, in return, committed to do 450 hours of pro bono work for them. I have done that a long time ago. Okay, and a lot of it is speaking engagements. So I have spoken, happy to say, I've spoken through many states in the United States. What I mostly speak on is First Amendment Christian rights. So I'm one of the presenters for the Iron Sharpens Iron Men's Ministry. So I go around the states through that. I'm actually going to speak for them in Sarasota, Florida later this year. And Jeremy, the smart lad that he is just going to make sure that he takes a family vacation around that time so that I get a business expense write-off, right? So, my focus tonight is going to be, I'm going to cover the Declaration, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, but my focus tonight, you'll see, is going to be a lot on the First Amendment, on rights of Christians. Now, I put in the Facebook posting, I said, if you know pastors, you know church people, please invite them to be with tonight, and I'm happy to have you. But scripturally speaking, if where two or more are gathered in my name, you got church, right? Okay, so when I'm referencing church, I'm talking to all of us, okay? Because if there's one area where I think you want to know why the country is going in the wrong direction, you want to know why we have tyrant governors and presidents and things like that. Although, can you really call him a president right now? No. Yeah. The reason why we have tyrants is because we are forgetting our first right. We're not teaching it in schools. We're not defending it aggressively. And when that happens, we start to see these things. I have always told people that you want to know two things. Two things any fascist dictator, any fascist dictator, two things they go after. They go after your God and your guns. Okay? If any of you remember, back in 2008 when he was at the time Senator Obama and unfortunately became President Obama for 2 terms, you can find it. There's a presentation he did where he mocked conservatives. And the two things he said that we cling to are God and our guns. Now, I heard that, saw that, and I was stunned. I was shocked to say, is anybody else seeing this? Whether it's your Stalins, your Lenins, your Hitlers, your Pol Pots, your Mao Zedongs, that's the two things they go against, your God and your guns. And if you take away those two things, you can rule over everybody. So, I'm going to focus on First Amendment rights tonight. Now, I have a lot of quotes. I have a ton of quotes from founding fathers. I love them. Sometimes the quotes are more revealing of what they intended for our country than some of the documents. So I always put a lot of quotes in my presentations. I've got way more than what you're going to see tonight, but I like using them. I'm going to start out my presentation tonight with a quote from a great theologian, Linus Van Pelt, who said, "There are 3 things I've learned never discuss with people: religion, politics, and the great pumpkin." Now, you know Linus, right? A great theologian. If you ever watched at Christmas time before they block it, he gives the meaning for Christmas, right? So I use that as my opening joke here. If Charles Schultz's family ever finds out I'm doing it too much, I'll probably get sued. But it's for education purposes. So I use that for an opening joke, but I'm also telling people this is the problem with our nation, with our country, with our world today. Not necessarily the great pumpkin, but we don't discuss religion and politics. They become this, you got to go away from this. You can't discuss these things. It gets people angry. That's unfortunate. When you can't discuss this stuff, we're not going to get better. It's going to get worse. So just something to think about there. Now, before we get started, I want to talk to you about some cases that the Alliance Defending Freedom is helping on. A couple issues that you should be aware about that are coming up very soon for us that are going to impact your life. First, probably many of you heard of this, the Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. This is the possible case, I'm going to say it's not going to completely overrule Roe v. Wade, but this is a challenge that the Supreme Court has accepted where they're saying, so in Mississippi, the law passed in 2018 prohibits abortions after 15 weeks. And it has been struck down. But the Supreme Court is taking this case up. It's the first time since 1972 that we're going to have a legitimate chance of weakening Roe v. Wade. It's not going to completely overturn it, but it could be a case in the right direction. So be on the lookout for that. Be in prayer for that. That's an important case that's coming up. Next, State of Washington versus Arlene's Flowers. Now, this lady, Barronelle Stutzman, she is the sole owner of Arlene's Flowers, which is in Richland, Washington. She has served people who identify as homosexual for many years. A longtime customer, Robert Ingersoll, and another man, Kurt Fried, approached her to have her provide flowers for their same-sex wedding. Based on her First Amendment rights, her religious freedom, she said, no, I will not do the flowers for your wedding. I don't support that definition of marriage. I support the definition of marriage given by God, which is one man and one woman. And she said no, but she gave them suggestions for other florists who would handle the case. Or the case, rather. Let's get into a case. Now, get this. This is scary. After reading a Facebook post, the ACLU, do you know what the ACLU is? The Anti-Christian Legal Union. The ACLU and the Washington Attorney General sued Ms. Stutzman, alleging that she was guilty of discrimination based upon sexual orientation. So Robert Ingersoll, the man who brought this up to her in the first place, he didn't start the case. And how did the case start? Through a Facebook posting. Isn't that remarkable? The anti-discrimination law states that the general public may not violate anti-discrimination laws even on the basis of sincerely held religious beliefs. So your First Amendment rights, what you know the Bible says, what you believe, not in the state of Washington. The Washington Attorney General and the ACLU have asked that the damages and fees for the case not be limited to the corporation Arlene's Flowers, but also to Ms. Stutzman personally. It was approved. Okay, now I got to stop there for a second, and you need to understand the seriousness of this. I create corporations for people. I have people who come to me regularly and say, hey, I want to make an S corporation, I want to make an LLC. Yep, I set them up for them. Why do you create a corporation? Two reasons: liability protection, taxes, really. So the state of Washington is pretty much saying we're going to fly in the face of decades of legal precedent. And we're going to say that we are going to not just limit this case to just her business or corporation. We're going to also say we're going to come after her personal assets as well. And they approved it. Do you know how expensive it is to have a lawsuit go all the way up to the Supreme Court? It's incredibly expensive. If she loses this case, she will be wiped out financially. Not just of her business, she will lose her house, her personal accounts, everything. And the state of Washington said, we're okay with that, which is stunning. So a 9-0 decision at the state of Washington Supreme Court, they concluded that the government can force individuals to create artistic expression and participate in events in which they disagree. Where's your freedom of speech? Where's your freedom of religion? A 9-0. The Supreme Court, so a federal Supreme Court, advised the state of Washington to reconsider their decision in light of the Masterpiece Cake Shop case. Do you know that one? Jack Phillips, ADF represented him on that one as well. He won, barely, and it wasn't written as well as I would like it to be, but he won, and the Supreme Court said to the state of Washington, hey, you might want to reconsider your 9-0 decision. Well, guess what? They decided again, and they still said 9-0. She loses. So now it's petitioned to the Supreme Court once again. And we're waiting to hear what's going to happen on that. But understand, that is not liberty, that is not freedom. That is taking your liberties, your freedom, and also taking all of your personal assets. The precedent that sets is incredibly alarming. The Equality Act. If you haven't heard of this one, you should be aware of this. This is an act which would add sexual orientation and gender identity as protected statuses in federal non-discrimination laws. Under the Equality Act, schools could be forced to open girls' bathrooms, locker rooms, and sports teams to biological males without being required to notify parents. I'm going to be opinionated here, okay? So I will always say, this is my opinion. If you think it's okay for a biological male to say that he thinks he's a girl and get into a boxing ring, wrestling ring, MMA cage with a girl and beat her up. Where are the feminists on this? How come they're not offended by this? How come they're not up in arms about this? So in Florida, I'm happy to say, Governor DeSantis, he said, nope, we're not going to have this. It will be going to the Supreme Court. I promise you that. It is just a biological fact that men are normally bigger, stronger, more athletically capable than women. And if you think it's okay to get into a sports event, especially the contact ones, when you're going to beat up a girl, that's disturbing to me. Personally, that's disturbing to me. But some people say, well, they have to have that. That's equality. The Equality Act could be used to introduce LGBT curriculum into schools with no opt-outs. Activists could use the Equality Act to put impressionable children on a path to gender transition. The Equality Act could be used to keep parents from choosing the best options to help their child if their child is struggling with gender confusion. And the Equality Act will negatively impact nonprofit organizations of all kinds, including social service ministries, religious organizations, and churches. Now, understand, when I speak at the Iron Sharpens Iron Ministries, I'm surrounded by a lot of ministries there, camps, people who write books, have smaller 501c3 ministries. What I'm telling them is you need to realize that, say you have a school, a Christian school, and you get an individual who says they identify with the opposite sex, and they want to teach at your school. If you say, no, we can't have you teaching at our school, they will be sued for discrimination, for a civil rights violation. That's disturbing to me. Okay, now, question. Who gives you your rights? God or government? This is the number one alarming thing that I had blaring in my mind last year when all the COVID nonsense started, is I saw people saying, what does the government tell me to do? What's the governor telling me to do? Guess what? We're not supposed to wait on the government to tell us what to do. God gives us our rights, not government. So, I want to ask you a question. Has this happened before? You forget your history. The amazing thing is we aren't teaching history in our schools anymore. We're tearing down statues. We're not teaching things because it's not politically correct. We don't, unfortunately, teach the Bible much in schools nowadays. Well, I was thinking back on, in light of what was happening last year, I was thinking, has this happened before? This seems awful familiar to me. Okay, yep, it is. In the book of Samuel, you'll find out that Samuel, although was a prophet, maybe not so good of a dad, because he had two sons who were taking up the reins behind him, and they were kind of bums. And so the people were not happy with them. So all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah. They said to him, you are old, and your sons do not follow your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us, such as all other nations have. But when they said, give us a king to lead us, this displeased Samuel. So he prayed to the Lord, and the Lord told him, listen to all that the people are saying to you. It is not you they have rejected, but they have rejected me as their king, as they have done from the day I brought them out of Egypt until this day, forsaking me and serving other gods, so that they are doing to you. Now listen to them, but warn them solemnly, and let them know what the king who will reign over them will claim as his rights. Now pay attention to this, and I got to read quick. Samuel told all the words of the Lord to the people who were asking him for a king. He said, this is what the king who will reign over you will claim as his rights. He will take your sons and make them serve with his chariots and horses, and they will run in front of his chariots. Some he will assign to be commanders of thousands and commanders of fifties, and others to plow his ground and reap his harvest, and still others to make weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers and cooks and bakers. He will take the best of your fields and vineyards and olive groves and give them to his attendants. He will take a tenth of your grain and your vintage and give it to his officials and attendants. Your male and female servants, the best of the cattle and donkeys, he will take for his own use. He will take a tenth of your flocks, and you yourself will become his slaves. I'm thinking of a tyrant in Springfield who last year was telling us when we could or couldn't open our businesses. Now, I'm happy to say, and I'm sorry for people who did not have this, last year for me was an excellent year. You know, I am mostly an estate planning and administration attorney, so people come to me and prepare wills, powers of attorney, trusts, things like that, and then I get to be the referee when the greedy people are coming looking for their money because someone has died. Now, whether it was because everybody was afraid of COVID, or it was just a year that, you know, people, I didn't see an alarming number of people dying because of COVID. All last year I had one client that died of COVID. Everybody else, if they died, it was natural causes, if you can even do that anymore. But I remember hearing that Governor Pritzker was going to announce what he was going to do with businesses. Thankfully, the legal practice was considered an essential business, so I was able to continue doing my practice. I was worried that he wasn't, but I kid you not, I remember being at my house, getting online, trying to find out this executive order that he had, and I was saying, I'm about to break the law. Because if he was going to tell me that I cannot support my family and pay my bills and keep food on the table because he thinks it's his job to protect us, which I don't remember him ever. I don't ever remember him having that power, that he needs to protect us. I was going to break the law. I was going to say, fine, I will be an attorney who will break the law. Now, the sad thing is, I had many people coming to me last year who were going out of business because health departments were coming to them and saying, we're shutting you down. What do you do on that? These are not elected officials mostly, and thank goodness that most of the state's attorney's offices and the sheriff's departments in the area and some of the mayors were saying, we're not going to enforce that. Some said, no, we will enforce it. I was telling all these people that were calling me last year, thankfully many of them just barely stayed afloat. I was literally saying to them, here's my card, here's my number, someone from the health department calls you, you say, here's my attorney. He'll be expecting your phone call. And I wasn't charging anybody for that, okay? And I appreciate the applause, but guess how many people called me? Zero. Because if people stood up and said, we're not going to allow this to happen, they were finding nobody was prosecuting. Nobody. And if they did, I don't care how many hours in the courtroom I was going to be, and I would hope we would win, I was going to fight that one to the death. Because that's absolutely ridiculous that our king, as he sees himself, although he was gallivanting off and doing whatever he wanted, was telling us how to live our lives. Just like a king. And Samuel was warned by God. Tell them here's what's going to happen. They still wanted a king. History repeats itself. Now, oops, oh yeah, see, I'm jumping ahead. Now, how does this happen? How in the heck have we gotten to where we are today? Well, here's a couple interesting facts. 48% of Americans believe the Bible is not literally true. Only 42% of Americans believe God is the source of truth. 58% of Americans believe individuals decide what is morally true. That's a scary situation. I've been a college professor until all the colleges I taught for, just where liberal world is saturating the college world, where, gee, you have a conservative Christian professor, my contracts weren't renewed. I wonder why. But I was seeing this when I was saying to my students, who gives you your rights? Who gives you your rights, God or government? The number of students who were saying more and more that it is government that gives you rights. It was rising. That is alarming to me. And that's what we're dealing with. And I'm jumping ahead. I homeschool my kids. Okay? If you aren't homeschooling your children, you should be. It's not difficult. People say, oh, I can't afford it. Yeah, well, guess what? I encourage people to really sit down and crunch the numbers and say, all the driving you got to do, all the tuition you got to pay, all these expenses. And could somebody of your family, even you're not doing it all the time. My wife is a mental health counselor, comes in handy, being married to me, and I'm an attorney. She takes the lion's share of the homeschooling. Yep, when we first started up, we got a lot of materials, made sure everything was ready to go, and then we plowed into it. I have never regretted it, not one day in my life. And it is not that difficult. And my children, we teach my children everything, right? Of course, my children are grounded in the truth of the Bible, but we teach them everything. Good luck getting that out of a public school system. So if more people were homeschooling, these numbers would be different, is my professional opinion. Now, why is this happening? I'm going to try to get through 6 things really quick. First, ignorance. President James Garfield, if he wasn't assassinated, I think would have been one of the best presidents that the United States ever had. This is my favorite quote of all my quotes that I have. He says, "Now more than ever before, the people are responsible for the character of their Congress. Now you can replace Congress with government, okay? If that body be ignorant, reckless, and corrupt, it is because the people tolerate ignorance, recklessness, and corruption." Samuel Adams said, "No people will tamely surrender their liberties, nor can any be easily subdued when knowledge is diffused and virtue is preserved. On the contrary, when people are universally ignorant and debauched in their manners, they will sink under their own weight without the aid of foreign invaders." That's happening right now in our country. So here we go again. Here's some fun facts. 70% of American adults cannot name their senators or congresspeople. More than half don't know their actual number of senators. How many senators do you have? And how many have per state? Okay, thank you. Now, there wasn't a lot of people who answered that. You answered it, right? That's my star pupil right there. She gets the gold star. Nearly a quarter cannot name a single right guaranteed by the First Amendment. If that's you, here's the good news. I'm going to actually put the First Amendment up on the board tonight, so you have no excuse anymore. 63% cannot name the 3 branches of the government. I will put those up there tonight too, so you'll be in, hopefully you can resolve that. Half of native-born Americans couldn't correctly answer 70% of civics questions on the United States citizenship test. Do you understand that? Do you understand that there are people who are born in other countries who come here, hopefully legally, and want to become citizens, and they can pass the exam better than 70% of the people who are born here? Right. What about homeschooling? Think about that with the public schools. Now, what's the cure for ignorance? Well, in 1 Peter 3:15 it says, "But in your hearts revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect." Oh, that's hard, the last part. Yeah. If you could be in prayer for me, I do have to. One of the nice things about COVID last year, I got to be honest, is I have liberal in-laws. Lucky me. They live up in the Madison area. I haven't seen any of them in person in like 8 to 9 months. Thank you, Jesus. Well, now they're vaccinated and they think that they're all protected now, even though the vaccine doesn't prevent the spread of COVID. So guess what I got to do on Saturday? Be sick. Yeah, I'll get COVID. So I have to, so please be in prayer for me with my liberal in-laws. It's hard to be the only person in a room when, and I'm not mean, mostly, but when you defend your Christian beliefs and you realize I'm the only one here. My wife and kids are there, of course, but my kids are like, well, we don't want fighting with aunts and uncles and grandma. And my wife is just, can't we have peace in the family? And I'm like, no! 2 Timothy 3:16 through 17. All scripture is God-breathed and useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness, so that the servant of God may be thoroughly equipped for every good work. John Jay, who's the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, said, every member of the state ought diligently to read and study the Constitution and teach the rising generations to be free. By knowing their rights, they will sooner perceive when they are violated and be the better prepared to defend and assert them. We're not teaching in public schools the Constitution anymore. Heck, how many of you have ever heard that name before? John Jay. Well, good. I'm proud. Do you know who Benjamin Rush is? Do you know who George Clinton is? Okay, these are all founding fathers that you should know, because without John Jay, there would be no United States of America. He was pivotal. He was the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. We are a forgetful people. Okay? I'm sorry to say, we are just forgetful people. I share this with people all the time. I am Jewish. I'm a Christian, but I am a descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Oy vey. Okay? Now, I don't say that because, I get a gold star. Well, if I wear a mask, it's the equivalent of the gold star. But I don't say that because I get a free ticket into heaven or anything like that, although Jesus was Jewish, just so you know. Someone told me one time that Jesus was Roman Catholic, and I was like, it didn't start for like 400 years until after his resurrection, so I don't think he was Roman Catholic. But if you ever, I found out I was Jewish when I was 19. My wife's been Jewish all her life. I dated this beautiful young lady. I proposed marriage. I was just happy she said yes. I didn't think much beyond, well, where are we going to get married at? So we were planning the wedding, and I was learning a lot of Jewish stuff with her family. And my grandmother on my mom's side of the family just one day said, well, my mom was Jewish. We just didn't practice it. My mother-in-law, the liberal. Now, that was almost where I won her over, right? Missed it by that much. She's got a son-in-law who's an attorney and a Jew. Oh, wow, Mazel Tov, that's a blessing. Nope, didn't quite win her over. But one of the things about the Jewish faith is they tell you every year, in my house, we do a Passover Seder. In my house, every year. My kids love December. Why? You got Christmas, you got Hanukkah. Woohoo! Jackpot! I don't buy gifts for both. They can get their Hanukkah presents from the in-laws. We do the Christmas stuff. But if you read the Bible, one of the themes, just like this in the Bible, in the Torah, in the writings, in the Gospels, God tells us, teach this to your children. I wasn't there when the seas were parted and they crossed through on dry land. I wasn't there to see all the plagues, but I teach them to my kids every year. Why? Because I want my children to remember what God did for us. God's always saying, remember what I did. Don't forget. Same thing here. We're not teaching what's in the Constitution. People forget, our rights are taken. What's the most important step of building a house? Foundation. What's the most important step of building a government? Foundation. What's the foundation of our government? Who gives us our rights? God. I want to talk to you about a concept called natural law. Okay? Natural law Well, let me ask you a couple questions first. I'm going to quick buzz through these. Are all laws moral? Is all morality legal? No. If last year wasn't an eye-opener for this, what the heck, how far has your head been in the sand? We were told to do things because it was legal, but it wasn't moral. Roe v. Wade is the epitome of something that's legal, but it is not moral. Killing children is not moral. I don't care who you are. So if you don't have all morality is legal and then all laws are not moral, then you say, well, how do you have the law? I always ask people this. If I had a 2-year-old in here right now, and they're playing with a toy, and I go up to that 2-year-old and I take the toy from them, what are they going to say? Yeah, they're going to go, mine. No. Not, and now if I say to them, you're mad. Why are you mad about that? Are they going to go, well, Mr. Ramsey, in the case of, Plessy versus Ferguson, or, the Massachusetts versus Jacobson, or something along those lines, or this statute, or this United States Code, it's improper for you to take my property. I will cite the Fifth Amendment, and of course say those things to you. Wow. Must be Jeremy Ramsey when he was 2 years old. No, the child's going to say mine, and they're going to say that's wrong. I always tell people, I'm happy to have everybody here. Just love all around. Conditional. But now, everybody's done. I'm done teaching. And I say, I want to get home. Yep, I want to get home. It's late. I got clients tomorrow. So I'll take a quick break. While I'm taking a break, I'm going to go slash all your tires. Okay? Want to know why? Because when you're all out in the parking lot going, what the heck? I'm going to be driving in my car. Hey, thanks for coming out. See you later. Is that wrong? It's right for me. Okay? So isn't that moral? How do you know this? You know these things because of natural law. Natural law is the foundational principles of right and wrong, which are both right for all and at some level known to all. As in, you know what's right and wrong because you are born with it, because you are given that understanding from God. The Constitution was written, the Declaration, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights were written by very strong Christian individuals who understood this and said, how do we make sure that government doesn't take our God-given rights? Not, what does our government tell us what to do and not to do? So you say, well, but in school, public school, I was taught that all of the founding fathers were either atheists or deists, right? Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, oh yeah, they weren't Christians. That's all you're taught in public schools, which is a lie. Well, here's the funny thing. In the Declaration of Independence, it says, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. That's a funny thing for a bunch of atheists to say. Goes on. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Again, very strange for atheists to say. That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. We understand what rights are given from God. We have government to prevent chaos. But the government that can survive and succeed, which started out as, is a government that knows you don't take God-given rights from people. And we have not had that, unfortunately, in a long time. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government. Good grief. If the founding fathers were on the earth right now, they would say, what the heck have you people done? I saw something, quote on Facebook the other day, said if the founding fathers were on the earth right now, they would already be firing their muskets. Yeah. Right? Yeah. We sit and we do nothing, and we say, well, what are you going to do? You ever read George Orwell's 1984, An Animal Farm? Okay, Animal Farm, when the pigs were taking over, what did the pigs do to placate all the animals who were upset? They put a TV in front of them. Just shut people up, distract them. Now, what's the supreme law? What is the supreme law of the United States of America? Okay, you were scaring me a little bit there. Nobody said anything. Constitution. Constitution says, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty, to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. It's all very important stuff, but the most important words are at the top. We the people. We are the ones who have the rights. We are the ones who are supposed to tell them what to do, and we're not doing that. Patrick Henry said, the Constitution is not an instrument for the government to restrain the people. It is an instrument for the people to restrain the government, lest it come to dominate our lives and interests. That's happening right now. There are 3 branches of government. Okay, so if you didn't know this from before, I'm helping you out here. After this presentation, you'll be more equipped to run for political office than most of our elected officials in the United States of America. Article 1, legislative branch. They make the laws, not the president, not the governor. Executive orders are unconstitutional. And I'm going to be fair here. Every president, whether Democrat or Republican, they've been doing executive orders for a long time. They're unconstitutional. Executive branch, they enact the laws. They make sure that they're followed through, they're enforced. The judicial branch, they determine if the laws created violate the Constitution. They're not supposed to write laws, but they have been for a long time. And why is our country going the way it does? Because the 3 branches are violating their constitutional powers. Another quick question. What form of, now, and I know, usually when I ask this question, I get the answer that most people are going to say, and it's wrong, but I'm in a group full of conservatives. Okay? So I know this is not going to be a shocker to you. What form of government are we supposed to have in the United States of America? Right. Most people say a democracy. If you ever hear, this is my litmus test, one of many. If I ever want to know an idiot, I hear someone say, in our democracy, and I go, especially if they're an elected official, I'm like, wow, you're just not bright. Because we do not have a democracy. We were never intended to have a democracy. James Madison said, democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have in general been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths. John Adams said, remember, democracy never lasts long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself. There never was a democracy yet that did not commit suicide. That's strange. I'm pretty sure that Barack Obama told me I had a democracy. But what does John Adams know? He was just there when the country was created and all these documents were, written. Benjamin Franklin said, democracy is 2 wolves and a lamb deciding what to have for dinner. Liberty is a well-armed lamb. Yeah, right there. That's about as much as I'm going to do the Second Amendment tonight, although I'd like to talk about the Second Amendment. I don't have time. But there you go, well-armed lamb. Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution says the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government. What does that mean? What's a republic? It is a state in which supreme power is held by the people and is exercised by their elected representatives and which has an elected or nominated president rather than a monarch. So what that means, once again, we the people who have our rights given by God are supposed to be telling them what to do for us. They are public servants. They're supposed to serve us. Do we have, let me ask you this, do we have a democracy in the United States, or do we have a republic in the United States? Either answer is no. What do we really have in the United States? We have an oligarchy. You know what an oligarchy is? It takes a lot of its mob mentality from democracy, but it's where you have too much money, too much power in the hands of your elected officials. That's what we have in the United States, unfortunately. And you die. Your country dies because of that. A lady asked Dr. Franklin, well, doctor, what have we got, a republic or a monarchy? A republic, replied the doctor, if you can keep it. This is our fault. This is our problem. We've been letting this happen for far too long, and now they're taking over our lives. Separation of church and state. Oh, I hate when I hear people use that phrase. It's like nails on a chalkboard because they don't understand what it actually means. They don't know where it comes from. Where is it found? Well, it must be in the Declaration of Independence, right? Nope. It must be in the Constitution then. Nope. Well, that must be in one of the amendments in the Bill of Rights. I bumped that. Nope. It is in an 1802 letter from Thomas Jefferson to a committee of the Danbury Baptist Association. Jefferson wasn't even in the United States at the time. He was in France, and they were writing and debating the First Amendment. So Jefferson was in France. The Danbury Baptists were writing to him saying, we are concerned that we are not going to be allowed to be Baptists in Danbury. And Jefferson wrote, I'll read the letter, but he was writing to them saying, it's okay. We're not going to have a government-enforced, a government-supported church. Did you know that when we were colonies, and you can look this up, you can find this information, when we were colonies, each colony had a supported church. You had the Anglican Church of, Virginia colonies, and you had the Catholic Church of, Connecticut or something like that. Before we were states, we had colonies, and they had a church that was supported by the government. And they were worried this was going to happen again. So Jefferson said, believing with you that religion is a matter which lies solely between man and his God, that he owes account to none other for his faith or his worship, that the legitimate powers of government reach actions only and not opinions, I contemplate with sovereign reverence that act of the whole American people which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. Jefferson was saying the government's never going to interfere with your freedom of religion. What happened last year? They shut down churches for a bug that has a 98% success rate. And my question was to a lot of pastors, you gave up? You just tucked tail and said, yep, we're going to close our doors. And many of them did. And I was sorry to see that. And this is my opinion. If you had a church that did that, you need to find another church. That's my stance. Okay? Here's the actual text of the First Amendment, okay? Again, you will be more equipped to run for public office now than most of our elected officials. It says, Congress. It's not a school teacher. It's not a state employee. It's Congress that they're addressing. Shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. And there's a comma there. Everybody stops there. The Supreme Court stops there. Oh, that's a period. No, that's not a period. That's a comma. Apparently, you need to teach grammar at the Supreme Court level. You keep going. What did I say? Did I say something? Punctuation. No. I was just worried I said something wrong there. Okay. So it means you keep going because it says, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Now, I'm going to stop real quick, and I gotta keep talking fast. The only argument you have right now against the vaccine, right there, okay? I'm getting tons of phone calls from people. My job wants me to take the vaccine. My school is telling me to take the vaccine. I'm sorry to tell you, there's a Supreme Court case back in 1905, Massachusetts versus Jacobson. I think it's Jacobson. It's not good for us, okay? They were worried about smallpox back then, and the government was forcing vaccines and mask-wearing kind of mentality on America back then. And guess what? The Supreme Court said, that's okay. They said it's protecting others, bless you. And so you have to do what the government says. It was a bad decision. It is a bad decision. It's going to have to be challenged. But the only way you can fight the vaccine, and not even the masks. I'm sorry to say, you want to fight the masks, you don't have a good argument right now. But if you want to fight the vaccines, you're going to say that your First Amendment religious freedom rights are what you're going to use to fight the vaccine. They tested the vaccine on aborted baby cells. They did. So you're going to say, I don't support that, or you might not support vaccines. You can say that as well. Some people say, I don't believe in vaccines. My religious rights, my sincerely held religious belief is I don't support vaccines. That's your best argument. Beyond that, we're in uncharted territory here. So what did these atheists say? Well, Benjamin Franklin said that wise men have in all ages thought government necessary for the good of mankind, and that wise governments have always thought religion necessary for the well-ordering and well-being of society. That's a funny thing for an atheist to say. John Jay, again, said, Providence has given to our people the choice of their rulers, and it is the duty as well as the privilege and interest of our Christian nation to select and prefer Christians for their rulers. That's funny. I thought I was told, again, by Barack Obama that we weren't a Christian nation. What does John Jay know? George Washington said, while we are zealously performing the duties of good citizens and soldiers, we certainly ought not to be inattentive to the higher duties of religion. To the distinguished character of patriot, it should be our highest glory to add the more distinguished character of Christian. So I'm hoping that when you think of patriotic characters or people in your mind, George Washington, I hope, is in your top 5. George Washington is saying, if you're going to be a patriot, what's even more important than being a patriot is to be a Christian. When was the last time that was taught in public schools? Unfortunately. Founding Father Patrick Henry said, it cannot be emphasized too strongly or too often that this great nation was founded not by religionists, but by Christians, not on religions, but on the gospel of Jesus Christ. For this very reason, people of other faiths have been afforded asylum, prosperity, and freedom of worship here. The judicial branch. I'm going to go through this quick. Man, I got to go fast. Okay. John Adams said, judges, therefore, should always be men of learning, experience in the laws, of exemplary morals, great patience, calmness, coolness, and attention. Their minds should not be distracted with jarring interests. They should not be dependent upon any man or body of men. President Abraham Lincoln said, the candid citizen must confess that if the policy of the government is to be irrevocably fixed by decisions of the Supreme Court, the people will have ceased to be their own rulers. Elena Kagan, who's sitting on the bench right now, appointed by Barack Obama, said, judges will often try to mold and steer the law in order to promote certain ethical values and achieve certain social ends. Such activity is not necessarily wrong or invalid. That is, if you can see that and say, she's a sitting Supreme Court justice, and you're okay with that? That should have disqualified her from day one. But she's, well, you can try and impeach, but good luck on that. You can. April 9th, 2021, if you haven't been following, President Biden ordered a study of adding seats to the Supreme Court, creating a commission that will spend the next 6 months examining the politically charged issues of expanding the court and instituting term limits for its justices. He's warned them on the case that I showed you at the beginning, the one that it's not going to overturn Roe v. Wade, but it's going to knock it down a little bit. President Biden said if they decide the way that he's not happy with, he's going to push ahead with this. That's tyranny. That is the so-called president saying, I'm going to take over the judicial branch, even though I'm in the executive branch. I saw this, and I'm shocked. And this should be grounds for impeachment, but outright uprising of people saying, this man is a tyrant. It's ironic that the only other president who ever suggested this was FDR, when some of his policies didn't get pushed through. In an interview with President Biden, when they asked him about it, he said that it was idiotic of FDR to suggest such a thing, of expanding the Supreme Court. Okay, I gotta go through quick. I just want to talk real quick about the Lemon test. If you want to know one case that has ruined most of our First Amendment rights, it's the Lemon versus Kurtzman test of 1971. It's a 3-part test. It says, does the law in question have a primarily secular purpose? Secularism is religion. Okay? You have to have faith to be an atheist. And I think you have to have more faith to be an atheist than you have to be a Christian. But the Supreme Court, in their wisdom, created law from the bench where they said, well, if you're going to have something in the law about religion, does it have a secular purpose? Second, or B, does the law in question have a primary effect that neither advances nor inhibits religion? Now, can you do that? That's my question. I ask this people all the time. Can you neither advance nor inhibit religion? I don't think so. Do you believe in God or do you not believe in God? There's a pretty good line there. But this is what the Supreme Court says. Third, does the law in question foster an excessive entanglement between church and state? Did they define excessive entanglement? Nope. But guess what? The Lemon versus Kurtzman test has outlawed several programs providing limited assistance to private education, outlawed the posting of 10 commandments in public schools, outlawed the observance of a minute of silence at the beginning of each day and observance of voluntary prayer. State laws indicating that public schools must teach both evolution and creation theories. Again, I'll stop and say homeschool. Okay? If you want to teach your children about creationism, which is science, homeschool. Prevention of several nativity scenes in state-supported buildings. Johnson Amendment. I'm going to go through this quick too. If you're a member of a ministry or a member of a church organization, and you think that a 501c3 is a good idea, guess what? You're a fool. You have given up your First Amendment rights in exchange for money. Because the Johnson Amendment, which was proposed by Lyndon Johnson, senator at the time, it wasn't even argued. It was just pushed through, 501c3s. What you're doing with the Johnson Amendment, with the 501c3, is you're agreeing to never say anything political in exchange for tax money. Yeah. And you're getting your First Amendment rights taken away from you. And I'm sorry to say, but there are churches all over the place that are saying, oh, give a gift. Give a gift. We'll give you a tax benefit on it. Sounds nice. Guess what? When's the last time your pastor got up at the pulpit and said something about politics? And they should. So I got to run through that. So sorry. Okay. But I want to, I pose this to pastors and church leaders. Who's your master? Matthew 6:24, Jesus says, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. So if you're Chuck Swindoll, who's a fantastic pastor, one of my favorite pastors ever, he gave a presentation once at Dallas Theological Seminary to the graduating class. He said to the students who are graduating, who are going out in the ministry, he said, you have two choices. You're going to preach the truth, and your numbers are going to be small. Or you're going to preach the numbers, or you're going to preach you're not going to preach the truth, you're going to preach popularity, and your numbers are going to be high. Which one are you going to choose? And that's what's happening in churches right now. Churches are prosperity gospel. Churches are Joel Osteen, feel-good motivational speaking, and they're not addressing the issues that should be happening right now. Pastors in colonial time were fiery people. John Adams stated that the pastors were primary reason for America's independence. They were given the term the Black Robe Regiment. These were pastors who were going up and down the colonies, firing up the people, saying, King George is not God. Where are these pastors now? And because of that, we're losing our rights. Here's what pastors tell me. They say, we don't discuss politics in our church, it divides people. Well, that's too bad. People need to hear the truth. Pastor's letter for Planned Parenthood. God bless you as you have an abortion. Shocking. United Church of Christ pastor blesses Planned Parenthood after it sells aborted babies. This one I get all the time. You're with the Alliance Defending Freedom? No thanks. I defend you. The ACLU comes knocking on your door. I'm the guy that you need to call for protection. But I get that from churches all the time. Political correctness is running rampant. Years ago, I saw a website where it said political correctness is ruining our country. They were right. This woke movement that's going on right now, you can't say anything to anybody. Remember when we could be funny? I always tell this to people. When I say to people, I'm Jewish, and they go, oh, I couldn't tell. And I go, oh, I'll turn to the side and look right there. From the front, maybe not so much, but turn here. Oh, wow, look at that big Jewish nose. Oh, if I say that, I've offended people. I'm not politically correct. Oy vey. We can't be funny anymore. So I ask people, well, what are you afraid of talking about? Abortion, homosexuality, transgender, divorce, illegal immigration, welfare, politics. Are you afraid of losing money? Was Jesus afraid to talk about these things? No. Guess what? You can read in the Bible several sections, and Jesus spoke politics. He was not afraid to address the leaders of that time in the world at that time. So how come a pastor couldn't be better than Jesus and not talk about these things? Does God want you to be afraid? There are 365 verses in the Bible about not being afraid. Isn't that interesting? One for every day of the year. Charles Finney, who was pivotal in the Second Great Awakening in the 1800s, I love these quotes. He says, if immorality prevails in the land, the fault is ours in a great degree. If there is a decay of conscience, the pulpit is responsible for it. If the public press lacks moral discrimination, the pulpit is responsible for it. If the church is degenerate and worldly, the pulpit is responsible for it. If the world loses its interest in religion, the pulpit is responsible for it. If Satan rules in our halls of legislation, he does. He runs as a Democrat. The pulpit is responsible for it. If our politics become so corrupt that the very foundations of our government are ready to fall away, the pulpit is responsible for it. Let us not ignore this fact, my dear brethren, but let us lay it to heart and be thoroughly awake to our responsibility in respect to the morals of this nation. So what are you going to do? And how am I doing for time? Oh, man. Okay. You came in and listened to me tonight, and I'm happy to see all of you. And I hope I've given you a lot of information. I had to fly through some stuff pretty quick. But you came in tonight, you heard me speak, you hopefully like my corny jokes and some of the stuff I gave you. But so what? So what? So you came and listened to a Messianic Jewish guy talk. What are you going to do about it? There are organizations out there that you can get behind. Yes, I know monetarily, but you can do things for organizations where you volunteer for them, where you get involved with them, where you do things to get the word out about them. If you are a resident of the state of Illinois and you don't know the Illinois Family Institute? How come? You should know the Illinois Family Institute. They're sending stuff to me on a daily basis. Here's what's going on in Springfield. Here's bills you should be aware of. Here's how you write to write emails to your elected officials. Get involved with them. There's another organization that I'm supporting. Now I get some controversy on this. The Convention of States. Article 5, Section 1. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both House shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments. So guess what? It's never happened. Guess what? The momentum is building quite a bit. COVID-19 has had quite an impact where the Convention of States has a lot of people growing behind it. Now, if I took every single person in this room and you all wrote emails to Dave Severson or, I forget his name, the guy who used to be on TV. Stottleman, thank you. I don't like him that much, so. If you wrote a bunch of emails to your local elected officials, if everybody in this room wrote to them, guess what? They'd do something. If all the people in this room wrote an email to Dick Durbin, pause for effect. If everybody here wrote to Mr. Durbin, he won't care. I know. I write to him on almost a daily basis. And I just delete every response that he gives me. There's a certain Adam Kissinger. Do you know I almost got an office across the way from him? I was looking at office space across from him, and I don't know if I should have taken it or not. I would have been a thorn to him. He would have never been there. But if the federal level of government doesn't care, in my opinion, doesn't care about you. They don't care. They're rich, they're powerful. And you can write them all day long, they don't care. Your state representatives are not as wealthy, but if you start pestering them, enough people pester them, they'll do something about it. The Convention of States, the idea is that if we get enough state officials to call for a convention and propose amendments to the Constitution, we can get things done. The first one, I hope they would, if this happens, I hope that they would propose is term limits. So I support this organization. I think you should get behind it, but that's my opinion. Now, and I want to finish here soon. Oh, man. A friend of mine years ago said, "What's your life verse, Jeremy, in the Bible? What's your life verse?" And I went, "You got to have one? Am I going to get stopped at the gates of heaven?" And he's like, no. He's like, "What's a verse that you think you quote the most and you talk about the most?" And I was like, "Oh, that's easy. Matthew 7:21 through 23. Jesus says, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is on earth. On that day many will say to me, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name and cast out demons in your name and do many mighty works in your name?' And then will I declare to them, 'I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness.'" Scariest passage in the Bible. Okay? Hard litmus test. Okay? The question there is, when you do things, whose kingdom are you building? If you're building God's kingdom, God's going to reward you. If you're building your own, he's going to say, "I don't know you." Scary thing to hear from God, from Jesus. My question to all people who have heard this is, what are you going to do? What's your circle of influence? What ripples do you want to make? What kind of Christian are you going to be? Are you going to be a patriot? Every single person in this room has a circle of influence. your family, your friends, your coworkers? What are you doing to influence those people to make our world a better place? I've given you several suggestions of things to do. Because in 2 Chronicles 7:14, it says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and will heal their land. We still have a chance. Personally, I think we're in end times. That's my opinion. I know we can't predict it. We can prepare for it. I like the Olive Tree Ministries. Understanding the Time, Olive Tree Ministries. I should have put it up there. Jan Markell, Olive Tree Ministries. If we are in end times, which looks like it to me, I'm not giving up, okay? I'm going to keep fighting the good fight. We should all keep fighting the good fight because you get rewards for it and God's going to be proud of you. But you don't just give up. But there's still a chance. If people honestly turn back to God, He will heal our land. Thank you for your time. That's my contact information. I want to answer questions, but maybe I can't. And I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you for your time.